Okay, I think I'm live. I think I'm getting pretty good at this. Yesterday was kind of a debacle, but I just want to make sure that I'm live again. So, yes, awesome. All right, guys. Kelly Dunlap here. Let's get this party started. It is 7:30 Eastern Time, and I'm just gonna wait just a moment here. Again, just like yesterday, you won't be able to see me, but you'll be able to hear me and see me. So please comment when you're here. Just say hello and just, kind of let me know that you can hear me and all the good stuff. See me, but you'll be able to hear me. Oops, I guess she can. I'm just, there we go. Awesome. Okay, right on. So let's do this, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in again with me. I love hanging out with you. I love sharing. I loved all your feedback from last night's episode. I love when I hear that, you find it interesting, or, that it's something that you never even thought about or heard of or what have you. So right on. Cool. Okay, so let's rock and roll. So welcome. Go. So part one, we are going to set the foundation. So I've got some other really cool things to share. So setting the foundation is really a must to understand when it comes to making any kind of change. Okay, so with anything, you need to set a foundation, right? Like you wouldn't build a home on quicksand. You wouldn't, set off on something without making sure that it was safe, right? And that's how your body is too. So you have to remember that your body always wants to make sure that it feels safe, that it's not always in fight or flight. Now, most of us are always living in fight or flight, and we'll talk more about that later. But what most of us are doing is we are completely and totally inflamed. We have fires within us internally. We have fires that we're putting out constantly externally, right? So we've got a lot going on. And this is, as you know, I am not about quick fixes. They don't work, right? So what I do is I help people find their root cause and find resolutions. Oftentimes people will come to me because they want to lose weight, but what they don't realize before they come to me is that what we really need to do is put out those fires before we can remodel the home. And that's a statement that I say a lot. So we must build that solid infrastructure that allows change to take place. So like this woman here that I'm sharing with you is her on the left and then her on the right. Well, I can guarantee that the way she looks on the right, it was a pretty long journey, and it wasn't just like, oh, I just decided to cut calories and exercise more. There was probably a lot more going on along the way. Now, would that happen sometimes if somebody says, hey, I'm just going to cut my calories and exercise? Sure, sometimes it happens, but not always, right? So, a lot of times the population that I deal with are women who have underlying root issues that need to be dealt with, like autoimmune issues, thyroid problems, all that stuff. Women that are like, I don't understand what's going on with my body. I just don't get it. Like, what the fuck? I've done this, I've done that, and nothing is changing, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's where I come in and I help you to put out the fires, okay? So prioritization, and what I mean by prioritization, I'm talking about what your body will prioritize. Okay, not everybody understands this or even thinks about this. I kind of touched on it just a second ago, but most people don't recognize that your body does not want to prioritize weight loss. Your body is designed to do two things. Most of you that have been following me know this. I say it all the time. If you're a client of mine, you know this. Your body is designed to survive and reproduce. And if your body for any moment feels like it won't be able to survive or reproduce, it is not going to release weight. Okay? Factors in not wanting to release weight is, high stress, high cortisol, meaning high stress is what? Chronic. We talked about this last night. Chronic stress is not good. Remember last night too, we talked about how chronic stress slows down the acid in your stomach. Just as a matter of fact, I was happened to be talking to a client today, and she, was telling me about a stressful situation, and she said, so weird, I was having trouble going to the restroom, and I also ended up with heartburn. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. So what does that mean? You guys are all now digestion experts. So what does it mean? She ended up with this stress, which slowed down what? I just said it slowed down her stomach acid. So then, because her stomach acid slowed down, therefore she had acid indigestion, and it slowed her bowels, right? So this is just like, kind of an insider's, point of view on how I see things. And this is how I want you to see things. You need to become a detective to start to understand this information so that when this type of thing does happen to you, you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that was. Stress equals ABC, right? So most people think that when they decide to lose weight, that it's just all about calories in, calories out, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times they get defeated or feel like there's something wrong with me because they consciously say, well, I'm going to lose weight. Your body on the physiological cellular level is like, yeah, fuck you, think again. And the reason is because it doesn't feel safe. It's not going to release weight if it does not feel safe. And there's just no other way for me to describe that. It's just your body needs to not be so fucking stressed. Okay. And stress is caused by all kinds of things. And when I say stress, it's not just like work stress. It's like under eating stress, overeating stress, the relationship stress, the shit you're listening to and watching on TV stress, the lack of sleep stress. I mean, the stress. And then somebody will tell me, I do this, like I named off some of those. And then they put exercise on top of that. I'm like, you got to fucking stop that exercise. Like that is stress upon stress upon stress. And you're just layering stress. Okay. So a lot of times most people don't know that, like I said. And so it's like a big, oh my God. Exercise most of the time just feels really good mentally, right? And yes, it is important. I'm not saying don't exercise. What I'm saying is now let's shift the word prioritization over to you. You have to prioritize certain things like your sleep trumps everything. If you are not sleeping and you're getting up early to squeeze in that workout, my friend, get that extra hour of sleep. Okay. Sleep will always, always, always trump exercise. Okay. So moving on. So we're talking about building that solid foundation, setting the foundation, right? So we need to do things like remove obstacles. We need to eliminate things. Sometimes we need to add things in. Oftentimes people will be removing things versus adding things in. Like I just said, one thing that you could add in to really solve a lot of issues would be add in sleep, add in water, add in, just time to meditate, take a deep breath, stop wearing the damn busy badge. There's nothing honorable about that badge. Okay. So this could also be to removing, oops, that's my next slide. So, excuse me, this is all about clearing the muddy water. Sorry about that. We need to eliminate, so hear me out. You heard me talk about this yesterday. Remember, I talked a lot about inflammation. So we need to eliminate the biggest inflammatory causing culprits. Okay. That means inflammation causing foods and things in our lifestyle in order to help the body to prioritize what you want and desire, such as weight loss, for example. Okay. So I had just mentioned some things that you can do to help your body and just basically saying to your body, hey, it's okay. Everything's going to be just fine. We're not being chased down by a tiger, because you have to remember that we are dealing with a skin suit that is a gazillion, that has been evolving for a gazillion years. And so when the body is, feeling stress and things like that, it really thinks like it's fight or flight time. We're either going to live or die. Okay. And, thinking, back millions of years, it was kind of like food was in abundance during some months and then other months it wasn't. So it was live or die. Okay. So when we're constantly putting this chronic stress on our body, it really reverts back to that type of thinking. I know it sounds crazy, but all right. So also could mean eliminating refined sugars, gluten, and dairy to start. I'm telling you, if you just start by reducing these things, you will notice a big difference. Sugar alternatives should not be sucralose and saccharin. Sugar alternatives should be like stevia leaf, okay, monk fruit, that kind of thing. That's not going to wreak havoc on your body. We want to also be detectives on labels. We want to make sure that the ingredients that we're putting in our body are, safe and not going to cause digestive havoc like we talked about last night. And why is my computer doing this? Hold on, guys. Why? Okay, so let's go back to this. My apologies. All right. So gluten, as I had talked about yesterday, I had shared on my personal page, and I may have shared it inside of this group also, about how gluten just does not treat me very well. And here's the thing. I also want to share this too, is that the reason why, let me just try to explain this to you. Like, somebody might say, well, why do you even chance it? And why do you have it sometimes? And why does it treat you poorly sometimes? And why does it not affect you sometimes? You want to know why? Because it has everything to do with the integrity of what? Can you guess what it is? Take a stab at it. Put it in the comments. What do you think makes the difference in whether the gluten is affecting me or not? What do you think could possibly be compromised at that time? Just take a stab. I will watch the comments. There's no dumb answers, guys. I'm just trying to help you learn. All right, so gluten to many people causes like inflammation, achy, puffy, bloated, distension, constipation. Like there's all of these things. Gluten is actually a protein, but it is like a glue, hence GLU, gluten. Doesn't really serve many people very well. Oh, I spelled dairy wrong. And then there's dairy. Dairy is, oh my God, let me just say this. Dairy, people say, oh, I love my dairy. I love my cheese. It just gives me that little satisfying feeling, it's just a quick grab. It's a quick snack, right? And I totally get that. However, we have to think about dairy on a different way. We have to look at it no matter what. When that cow was impregnated, basically you are inhaling the hormones from the male and the female cow. Okay, even grass-fed. All right, so dairy oftentimes will cause digestive issues. It will cause, you to be thicker around the waist. And these things also, these three things that I'm mentioning, oftentimes if we have that compromised gut, so the answer to my what I was saying about how I'm affected differently is because the integrity of my gut at that moment was compromised, okay? Meaning that, the gut integrity, it can be, there are moments where it could be better and or worse, right? And so the reason why, let me just kind of backtrack on this. So let's say I was working on my gut, there's a specific protocol for that. And then I started to reintroduce gluten. I was fine. Everything was fine. Great. About 4 months, gluten didn't bother me, but I wasn't eating it all the time either. Well, then, boom, right after that 4-month mark, all of a sudden, it basically, started to affect me again. So at that time, so in other words, what I'm trying to get at is that my gut was clearly not completely resurrected or restored or whatever, or at the time there was a lot of stress going on too. So do you see what I mean? So when we do certain things, like when we, even like certain tests and stuff like that. So I just kind of want you to remember that certain things is all about the snapshot of what was going on at that time. Okay. All right. So back to the dairy. So dairy is definitely something that would be on, like, let's get it off my food list. So these three things. So if you just start with, getting sugar, like refined sugar, gluten and dairy, you will notice a difference in the way that you feel. And I see here Jennifer said mood, which is a great guess, Jennifer. Basically, gluten affects my mood. And we're going to talk about how food definitely will affect your moods here in a little bit. So I know for me, when I do eat gluten, it causes me high anxiety. I'm super bitchy. I'm achy. I'm tired. And it's extremely interesting how my food affects my mood and my poop. Okay. And I want you guys to get more in tuned on that as well. Okay. So these are the three major things. Like, for example, my clients, especially in my academy, my signature program, the Metabolism Reboot Academy, I'm always helping them to, remove, replace, and, start slow, because you got to start slow, man. It's not like, we just have to change everything overnight, because that's just overwhelming and stressful, and that's not how we want to live our life. All right. So, oftentimes, like I just mentioned, when it comes to like making change and things like that, we have to figure out, we got to tease out. I always use that term, we have to tease out specific behaviors and habits and routines that are tied to these, specific foods and things that we are eating, right? So these are also obstacles that I had mentioned that we have to fine tune, eliminate, okay? But behaviors, habits, and all of that, it all goes into what you are trying to achieve. So a lot of times people don't recognize that when they are looking to make body change and transformation, they're only looking at calories in and calories out. They're not looking at their behaviors. They're not looking at their habits. They're not looking at their routines. There's all kinds of brain shit connection that goes on in this. Specifically, especially like, neurotransmitters. With my clients, I always look into their neurotransmitters, make sure that our dopamine is in a good place, that our GABA is leveled out. Those are the main two, but we do also look at acetylcholine and serotonin. And there's, simple ways to go about, adjusting those. And really it's just about being a food ninja and tweaking those habits and routines and things like that. So ultimately too, what we want to do, you guys, with our body is we want to turn things that we want to make deficiency into sufficiency. So the body cannot fully function and digest and absorb in the face of deficiencies. Okay, let me say that one more time. The body cannot fully function, digest, and absorb in the face of deficiencies. So an example is certain key nutrients are required for the thyroid, for example, to create its hormones. If those nutrients are missing, right, from the body due to the insufficiencies in the diet or the digestive malabsorption, which I talked about yesterday, right? Remember how I said if we're not absorbing those nutrients that we so desperately need, then this problem, for example, is going to turn into hypothyroidism. So deficiencies, can be in key nutrients such as the macros, like we spoke about last night with the chicken sandwich. But you can also have deficiencies in hormones, neurotransmitters, like I just touched on. I work a lot on that with my clients, the hormones and neurotransmitters. And it should also be noted too that dieting of any sort can also lead to deficiencies. And a lot of times, people don't recognize that. And I just realized that I say a lot of times, a lot. I'm like, why am I fucking saying that all the time? Ay, ay, ay. And then also too, note that labs are not always needed to uncover certain deficiencies. People always think, oh, I got to go get my blood work done, which yes, for certain things it's important. But I'm telling you, in my coaching and certain programs, I provide specific tools to help bring some of these things to light, just like I mentioned earlier. It's like I'm always looking for red flags. Always, always, always. She mentioned stress, then she mentioned heartburn, then she mentioned her stool not moving. I'm like, oh, boom, stress ended up suppressing the stomach acid, therefore she was having those issues. Okay, so most missing key nutrients can be addressed simply just through lifestyle nutrition and sometimes supplemental adjustments. Okay, so you also need to address your environment. Oh! And I'm not just talking about the people around you and all that stuff. I'm talking about externally, yes, and internally addressing those fires, so to speak. And in addition, your environment that you're living in, is it cluttered? Are you, surrounding yourself by people who are the negative Nancys and the what if people and the safe Sallys and the Jesus Christ, like they can't catch a break people, which, I call, there's the living in cause or effect. Living in cause is basically owning responsibility no matter fucking what happens in your life versus I'm victim, I can't catch a break, woe is me. The finger pointer kind of people, they are like vampires of the world. They really just suck the life out of you. If the whole world just made the shift and said, you know what, I totally own responsibility for that. Yeah, I fucked up. So like, for example, I think, it took me a long time to get to this point personally. Maybe you can say the same for yourself, but like recently I had to reschedule a podcast recording a couple times with somebody. And that second time I was like, oh, I hate this. I hate asking her to reschedule again. And then when I asked her to reschedule, she declined. And you know what? I responded and I said, I don't blame you. I own full responsibility for scheduling you on that day and time. I fucked up. I overbooked myself and I am so sorry for inconveniencing you, but I don't blame you and I own full responsibility. So the funny thing is we ended up having a conversation basically stating that, you know what, it's all good. She goes, I'm actually trying to manage my time better. And that's one of the reasons why I had to decline and da-da-da. So we were both kind of in the same boat, right? But I could have lived in cause and been like, well, fuck her. And how dare her? Like, are you kidding me? Like now she's declining. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are people that would do that, right? But instead, and really that's your ego talking to. But instead it's like, hey, you know what? I own full responsibility. I'm so sorry, right? So you got to own responsibility. Even kind of like I did a live once and I talked about how a great example of living in cause or effect is you get pulled over by the police. You're either going to own responsibility on that or you're going to bitch to somebody else saying, yeah, they just needed to meet their quota for the end of the month, right? How many times have we heard somebody say that one? Or maybe you are somebody who says that one, right? Okay, so addressing your environment, you guys, is super important, both in and out. But one of the most difficult things is figuring out the whole thing that's going on inside. So that's why a lot of times you need the eyeballs of a coach, right? So, again, there's no cookie cutters. So this is why sometimes specific routines and behaviors and habits and things need to be applied to specific people so that it can be teased out. So just kind of going back to that last one. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are getting down to root causes, right? So we are dismantling dysfunction. So think about the phrase take root. So there are a number of patterns and habits that can take root within the body systems. Like, for example, chronic inflammation can be rooted into many, many factors, including, immune responses due to gut hyperpermeability, meaning like the gut being super, super compromised. Past incidences of infection, such as food poisoning, a car accident that maybe happened 20 years ago or so, and that pain was never fully resolved. Hormone imbalances can be rooted in an emotional response to, the death of a loved one. Blood sugar challenges established from a lifetime of imbalanced eating. So do you see how there's all these different things, So these root causes or triggers, as they are often called, can manifest as a diagnosis, right? Such as like Hashimoto's, fibromyalgia, diabetes. Okay, so I hope all that's making sense. Cool. All right. So you should be completely aware of all of those roots. So let me just kind of go back before I go to the three-legged stool. So you should be completely aware of those roots, right? That only exist in an environment that was right for the dysfunctions, okay? So they take root, and it's the perfect storm, so to speak, and this is where that three-legged stool comes in. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So dysfunctional patterns in the body can be set in motion from a number of events, right? Like I just mentioned, and usually from more than one, meaning that there are many factors that are involved. So you could also call that the perfect storm, the three-legged stool. Like for example, the autoimmune trifecta. Okay, there are three things that need to be in alignment, like perfect alignment for an autoimmune to be hatched, I guess. So like Dr. David Brady speaks about the autoimmune trifecta, which is commonly used now, and you may or may not have heard of it, meaning that use that term. And what it means is that in order for the autoimmunity to occur, there needs to be the perfect storm or three biological factors for that to happen. One of them is a genetic predisposition. And then two of them, you're going to be like, what? There's that damn gut again. The other two is the makeup of the bacteria in your gut, which is also known as the microbiota or the microbiome. You'll hear it in both ways, which is sometimes considered like a realm of infection. Because remember how I showed you, yesterday that it causes a lot of issues. And the compromised integrity of what? The gut, which is commonly known as leaky gut. So in other words, leaky gut, the bacteria in the gut, and your genetic predisposition. So think of it as, like I said, this three-legged stool is the perfect storm. And this is something that, just envision, obviously, but I've got a little image there for you. But without one of those legs in place, you guys, without one, that stool would not be standing up. There would be no leg for it to stand on, right? So therefore, that storm would never happen because it needs all three in order for that to hatch. Isn't that crazy too, that two of the things that I mentioned were from the gut? It's like, oh, there's that damn gut. Right. All right. So now we're going to move into part two. In part two, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some foods and things like that. But I want you to think about what we talked about last night. I want you to start seeing things through different lens. I want you to start looking at food differently. And maybe you already did today. Maybe you thought about that chicken sandwich, that journey of that chicken sandwich yesterday. Maybe you thought about like, oh, if I eat this, it might slow that down. Or if I have that, I might feel this way. Or that's what I am here to help you do, is just to make that shift, just to see things a little bit differently. So I want you to look at it through the lens of more so of food, mood, and poop. Like if I eat this food, how is it going to make me feel? Is it going to speak to my body well? Is it going to am I going to be in a great mood after I have this? Or is it going to make me more tired and fatigued and bitchy like gluten does to me? And is it going to stall my poop? Or is it going to make me run to the bathroom, right? So I just want to simplify this because clearly I believe after yesterday, like I said, I know that you're digestion experts now and you really understand it. And again, you could go back and rewatch it. I know a couple of you had said that you want to go back and re-listen or watch. But it really just is as simple as looking at something like the chicken breast versus the donut, right? They're both of these here are 255 calories, but what? They're going to do what very differently? They're going to digest very differently. One's going to be digested quicker than the other. The whole process of the digestive, system, where it starts and what gets released and all of those things is pretty interesting. It's almost like I keep envisioning like a car wash. I mean, a car wash is not like obviously a digestive system, but if you think about it, there's all these things that get set into motion. Car comes through, this happens, that happens, this happens, you know. It's kind of the same thing with our digestive system. Everything knows like when it's turn or time to do something. So looking at food through like a different lens, most people in the beginning of their journey just look at this food as calories only. They don't look at it like, how is that going to be digested? How is that going to make me feel? Food, mood, poop, right? They don't look at that. They don't even think of the hormonal aspect either. How is this going to affect me hormonally? Okay, so it's really all about like, how are both of these things going to make me feel? Well, I know, I don't know about you, but I know what? If I eat the donut, it's going to digest pretty damn quickly, right? Except it may have a little bit of fat in there on the frosting. Might have some butter in there. So butter what? Fat is what? The slowest to digest. Remember yesterday we said carbohydrates is the quickest to digest, protein is then next, and fat is the slowest. Your body can digest what? 10 grams of fat per hour. Now that chicken breast, that will take longer to digest. Hence, not that it's a bad thing, but it is going to create more satiety. But that chicken breast is also going to speak to your body much differently. Now, I don't know about you, but if you remember, we talked about what? The mitochondria, and the mitochondria are what? The powerhouses of our cells. So thinking of the mitochondria and thinking about the chicken breast and the donut, put in the comments which one you would want to enter and to basically nurture your mitochondria. Would it be the chicken breast or the donut? I know what my answer is. So go ahead and put that in the comments. I'm very curious to see what you would say. So remember the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell. It's basically, you know, where we get our energy from. We honestly, as humans, need to think about, how is this going to affect my mitochondria? Okay. All right. So I don't think, foods that I want that one. Yeah, we'll keep that in there. This is actually an old slide, but yes, this is true. Food sends information and signals to your body. So just like, I guess it's pretty much in alignment with what I was saying with the mitochondria, right? So it does, it sends those signals. Yes, I love it. Alicia and Jen both said the chicken breast. Amen, 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 amen. All right, so there's an obvious difference in the macronutrients in those two items, right? So the biggest difference is how it affects the digestion, the hormones, the way you feel. So much different. Okay, but more importantly, how are you going to be impacted on that cellular level, right? Going back to that mitochondria. We want to make sure we feel amazing. When we feel amazing, we do amazing things. When our body feels amazing, it will do amazing things for you, right? You'll sleep better, you feel better, your mood's better. If it feels hormonally happy and it feels safe and all of those things, it's going to release the weight. Because I know everybody that's watching this, I don't know if there's ever anybody that just comes to me and says, you know what, I just want to learn. I feel great and I don't have any weight to lose. I don't think there has been anybody who's ever come to me to say that. You know, maybe after we've worked together and things like that. And, you know, a few of my clients are actually learning about, you know, becoming a coach and things like that. So you progress in those kinds of things. But I honestly don't know of anybody that says, I just always feel amazing. I mean, we are always looking to progress, right? And if you're not, you should be. We should always be looking to evolve. So once again, we've got, you know, 3 different types of foods here pretty much. So we've got an apple, which is a great snack, by the way. It's awesome. It's, you know, this is probably one of the biggest snack suggestions that I always make for my clients would be, you know, apple, because it's got lots of fiber in it. Remember we talked yesterday about making sure that we have enough fiber. Nuts are always great. And I just want to mention too, peanuts. A lot of times people will say, well, I want to have some peanuts. And I'll say, well, you might want to rethink that. Peanuts, they're not, the reason why I say that is because they're usually very moldy. So you might want to reconsider eating peanuts. I don't really eat peanut butter, and I don't really eat peanuts because of that reason. But if you do a little digging, then I do feel like there might be some that you might be able to come across it, not likely, but it has everything to do with the way that they are, I don't want to say processed, that's not the right word, but they could just, at the end of the day, they're moldy. Okay, so a lot of times people don't know that. But you know, the best nuts I usually recommend would be like your cashews, your almonds, walnuts, you know, things like that. But you need to measure those out, you guys. And let me just share this too with you too. Oftentimes people will look at beans and nuts as protein. Well, let me clear something up for you. Yes, they both have protein in them, but beans are really more starchy carbohydrates and should be seen as such. And nuts are very high in fat. So you want to make sure that you're looking at those servings, you know? Okay. And the funny thing, actually, the nut and the apple paired together is a great snack together, by the way. And then on the right, obviously, I've got, you know, your chicken with your vegetables and a beautiful, lovely, colorful little stir fry. And, you know, speaking of neurotransmitters, you want to make sure that you are not only satisfied with your palate, but that you're satisfied in that mind of yours, the whole physiology, or not physiology, the whole psychological part of this, right? Because we need to be satisfied in both regards. So adding a little hint of color to your food is always going to be helpful. Moving on to the next slide. Obviously, well, let's go back to this one really quick. This one would definitely be one, right, that we would want to nurture our mitochondria with. Agree? You know, and we also, you know, want to make sure that we are eating foods that are higher in fiber, good quality fats like your almonds, and then also protein. The more protein that you have, you know, you want to recognize that protein is going to always be very satisfying. It's going to help with maintaining muscle mass, which we don't want to lose. And when I say mass, don't take that word like, oh, I'm going to get bulky. We as women, we don't have enough testosterone for that to really even happen. But we certainly don't want to lose our muscle. We do not want to lose our muscle. Fact about muscle can atrophy, meaning that it can waste away in as much as 72 hours. So resistance training and strength training, things like that are important, but that's on a whole other thing, because like I was mentioning earlier, if you don't have your sleep and nutrition in a good place, don't even think about adding the exercise in. Okay? That's just adding in more stress. All right. So I brought up these because we tend to want to have these, right? It's just that human need, and we think that we're missing out, and we get the shoulds. Well, I should be able to have that. Well, yeah, I mean, you can have whatever the fuck you want. You could have an abundance of all of this if you want. But how does it make you feel? And especially now, knowing what you know, because you are digestive experts now, do you see this food differently? Do you look at this now and kind of rethink, how will this make me feel? How is this going to, when I look at this food, I think, how is this going to, A, make me feel right after? How is this going to affect my mood shortly after? How is this going to speak to my mitochondria, right? How is this going to digest in my body? So if you remember, I talked about the McDonald's meal, and remember how I mentioned that a McDonald's meal can take days to process because of all of the fat. Now, that goes for all of this stuff too. Now, mind you, You might even find, which I talked about this yesterday too, is that you might even find that when you look at these foods that your mouth might be starting to water. You might be, salivating. It's just that response, like that Pavlov response. Remember when he had the dogs and he would ring the bell, and the bell basically set the tone for the dogs. Like, oh, the bell's ringing. That means I'm going to get food, da, da, da. So the body was priming, right? So that's what happens is our body gets primed for, these foods. And that's why I said it's super important for us to also recognize that, businesses, they love to do smell advertising. You walk into Costco, it's right there in the front of the building. Do you think that there's any, like there's no mistake there, right? The moment that you walk in, you're smelling their pizza, you're smelling those cinnamon breadsticks things that they have. Plus, what else do they have at Costco? They might not have it right now because of the pandemic, but they have what? They've got women and men, I guess, all around cooking, giving samples. They know what they're doing. They understand that. Trust me. There's people that are, have specific jobs for this. Like, okay, we get their senses going, they taste it, they smell it, they taste it, they're gonna buy it, and they know that they're gonna make a shit ton more money when they have that, that food out there cooking. So, we have the potato chips, the chocolate chip cookies, the cake, all those things. And yes, we live in America, at least most of us do that are watching. And we know that these are going to be temptations. But I'm educating you on this because I want you to have this armor of knowledge. And the armor of knowledge is that when you are presented with these temptations, you are now going to think. You're going to really think. Mitochondria, digestion, food, mood, poop, right? Right? Okay. So protein, I wanted to bring up protein is because I want you to also really, really, really concentrate on getting your protein in. That's one of the biggest things that I always tell my clients is make sure you keep that protein up. That is going to help you. It's going to help you a lot. Like I said, it's going to help with that muscle. It's going to help with the mitochondria. It's going to help you keep you more satisfied, and it's going to keep you from the cravings and all of that stuff. So in closing, what I want to share with you is that I want you to understand that this is why I don't do meal plans, because this is all about you. There's no cookie cutters. If I were to prescribe, for lack of better words, the same meal plan to, we've got Jane, Patty, Alicia, Jen, I don't know who else is on here, but if I gave every one of you that's watching the same nutrition plan, one of you would say, oh, this is great. I feel amazing. And probably 90% of you would be like, oh my God, I got heartburn. I don't feel good. I can't poop. I'm tired. So is this all making sense to you now? So this is why you have to figure out like what fires are going on internally. You have to figure out, what's going on in there, in that environment, and how you are personally impacted by specific foods. So it's super important. You must be the detective. Now, if you're a client of mine, you already have access to this, but maybe you don't know that you have access to it. But if you're not a client, I would be more than happy to share this with you. You just send me a message and then I'll shoot it on over. I can send it via messenger or email or something. But I want you to pay attention to your food, mood, and poop. Keep track of it. And sometimes it's easier to just focus on one thing. For example, if you just say, I'm just going to keep track of what I'm eating and how it's making me feel, right? Or you could even just simplify it to like the food. Okay, I'm just going to keep track and kind of watch what I'm eating. Oh my God, I'm really just eating a lot of carbs. Holy fuck. Or most of my diet is just all fat, or I'm barely eating any protein, right? So, this stuff doing this kind of work will help you a lot. But when you tie in the mood and the poop, then you're like, oh my God, so it's really detective work. that makes the biggest difference. And this is not quick fix stuff, right? This is basically you recognizing a lot of things. So when you keep track of these things, your food, the mood, the poop, you will start to recognize patterns. Patterns in a lot of things. You'll start to recognize patterns in the way that you feel. Like if you have oatmeal for breakfast, you'll notice on those days you want to just eat carbs all day long. Or you might notice like, oh, if you have more of a protein oriented breakfast, oh, I really wasn't craving too much today. Well, do you think that there's any coincidence there? No, there is not. So then you might also notice like, oh, every time I have a granola bar, I see that my mood is really bitchy because I'm tired because I want to take a nap. Or, when it comes to the poop, it's like, oh my God, every time I had that, I just felt clogged and I couldn't poop for 2 days or, and so just keeping track of these things is going to be super, super, super helpful and help you get in tuned. I know like one of my clients the other day, she was saying, and she's a newer client and love her dearly. And, she was saying, I'm just having a hard time getting more in tune, like just in tune with my body, like what it needs, what it feels. And I'm like, well, you're with the right person because this is the majority of, the work that we do. And this is what really, really, really helps to make that change. So those of you that, are new to me or what have you, this is going to be awesome because this is like a clinical tool, for lack of better words, that I use. And I know that it works and I know it's super helpful. So again, if you would like me to send you this, just send me a private message and I'll get that on over to you. So you guys, we made it. We made it through another night. I am so grateful that you took the time to hang out with me. I always have so much fun. I love to teach. Love, 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 love. I hope that you were able to get something out of this and that you are feeling really good about some of the things that you've learned. It's always about, kind of collecting these nuggets of knowledge and, take what you need and don't what you don't. And maybe there might be something that you learned tonight, but you don't use it, but it sits in your back pocket. And then you're like, oh my God, I totally remember, I can use that now. So once again, thanks so much for tuning in. This is the end of day number 2 of You Are What You Digest, but you and I both know that it's more about you are what you absorb and what your body can do with it. So if you have any questions, let me know. Please comment. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was tonight. Like I said, when you guys are able to give me that information, the better. Oh, and you know what? Before I wrap this up, there's 2 things that I wanted to share. 2. My apologies. I set down my papers too soon, so don't go anywhere. Alicia also had a question. And what I want to share with you guys is number 1 is there's a really cool list out there that you've probably heard of. There's 2 lists. It's called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And it doesn't mean that the Dirty Dozen is something that you can't eat. It's just something that I want you to be aware of and make sure that you're really, cleaning your produce and stuff like that. This was the Dirty Dozen list for 2020, so I'm going to read through this briefly. Strawberries, spinach, kale, nectarines, apples, grapes, peaches, cherries, pears, tomatoes, celery, and potatoes. So again, that was the Dirty Dozen for 2020. They all these fruits and vegetables had tested positive for pesticide residues and had higher concentration of pesticides than other produce. Okay, so just be mindful, make sure that you're cleaning your stuff or getting organic in those. Okay, like my mentor says, one of my mentors, you vote with your dollar. So, buy organic when you can. The Clean 15 would be avocados, sweet corn, but I can tell you this, I personally don't eat any corn because I don't know of any corn that's not genetically modified. So I don't really eat it. If I do, it's maybe a bite or 2. Pineapple, onion, papaya, frozen sweet peas, eggplant, asparagus, cauliflower, cantaloupe, broccoli, mushroom, cabbage, honeydew melon, and kiwi. Now you'll notice, what do these have in common? A lot of them have like a hard skin or shell on them. At least most of them do. Okay. I would also probably add bananas to that, to be honest, because, you know, banana really, I would never buy an organic banana because it's got the peel and stuff like that. But I could be wrong. You know, I could be misinformed there. So I'll repeat that one more time. Dirty dozen: strawberry, spinach, kale. Nectarines: apples, grapes, peaches, cherries, pears, tomatoes, celery, and potatoes. So I would buy those organic. The other list, which is the Clean 15: avocado, sweet corn, pineapple, onion, papaya, frozen sweet peas, eggplant, asparagus, cauliflower, cantaloupe, broccoli, mushroom, cabbage, honeydew, and kiwi. Okay, last but not least, Alicia had a question about the digestive process when it comes to not having a gallbladder. Now, there are some variables there. It's an excellent, excellent, excellent question, because she's like, well, I don't have the gallbladder, so how does this affect me? Well, literally, it could go either way for you. So, you know, some people that don't have the gallbladder and they don't have, you know, those salts kind of dumping in and what have you, because the gallbladder is basically like a reservoir for that bile to sit there, right? And so for some people, they might have this effect of every time that they eat that they have to run to the bathroom, and then other people might have quite the opposite. So it really depends. And I know that's not an answer that people don't want to hear, or that want not an answer that people want to hear, but it also depends on the composition of the food that you eat too. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of factors that tie into play. And there's also there's the environment of what's going on internally. So this is why I can't say, oh, well, if you don't have a gallbladder, that means this, and this is going to happen. It depends on your internal and external environment, right? Because your lifestyle habits and practices tie into this too. You know what I mean? And so Sally could respond very differently than you do. So the other point that I want to make too is, if you are somebody that has issues where you're not able to really move, like your transit time is not so great, then that is where I would say we need to work with getting the body primed right before we eat, meaning like we talked about, you know, the gratitude, and I gave you guys the 10 important tips for digestion, and you know, some of those had to do with like priming the body, you know, saying your gratitude, smelling your food, really chewing your food, and all of that. There are, of course, enzymes that you can, you know, intake, like supplemental. I know for me, and I do have access to products, which some of you know, that are through a physician, and I'm so grateful for that. And I don't always run for the enzymes, because I want you to be able to work on it on your own, and let's see what happens by making other lifestyle habits, practices, and, you know, all those changes. Sometimes if we reduce the stress, it changes the whole digestive process, right? You know, so there's all these things. So if we, you know, put out certain fires, then the digestive process might change. So to see how the variables all change, everything just changes. So I don't say, oh, go run and take an enzyme, this is what you need. No, not everybody needs to go run for enzymes. Okay, you could change these things first before moving into that pill. For example, we are always trying to find something that is outside of us when we don't have to. We've got our own body's natural ability to do so. Our body produces those enzymes. Okay, so Alicia, I hope that answers your question. If that didn't, please let me know, but we can always talk about it more on our call Friday. And Jen, you are so welcome. She says, I learned more than I thought that I would, for sure. And that means so much. I'm so grateful that you have gotten something out of this. And again, you know, if you guys, honestly, if you take one thing away from these presentations, then that just means the world. So high five to you for taking the time for yourself tonight and hanging out with me. You know, education, you can never go wrong. And like I was saying yesterday, you, my friend, have to be your own biggest advocate. And I commend We'll see you tomorrow night, and let me know if you have any questions. We'll talk to you soon.